This is a later than usual stream. Uh, Hopefully, we'll get some people to show up. So, a couple of days ago, I'd complained about the um, lack of progressive victories. A lot of times, people go, "Oh my God, look at how many votes this one person was able to get." I'm like, yeah, but they still lost. Um, and I've granted exceptions when it comes to Senate, gubernatorial, obviously presidential elections, because I think that you have to have large, extensive amounts of money to compete on any serious level when it comes to those higher elections or races. But I've become kind of disenchanted with a lot of the candidates and the practices I see of them, and also the people that they affiliate with. So I wanted to lay out what I thought was the best solution or strategy, especially when you run against an incumbent, so someone that's already been in office for however many years or terms prior to you, um, going around. And ideally, you would, again, if you're lacking funds, how to win, lie. Yeah, they do that all the time, Envoy. But if you're, I was saying, if you're lacking cash and you live in some area that is small or otherwise without loads and loads of people, you could theoretically do a grassroots movement where it's you and maybe 4 or 5 volunteers knocking on doors, introducing yourself, having a little booklet of your positions on issues. You know, lie. Um, Something else that's appealing. The other part that I wanted to throw in there. Yeah, Dirk. In the post I made about the Justice Democrats being Yemen's one solution, they have only been able, and this is what disturbed me. I said to myself, wow, they're running all these candidates and they're all going to the general election. And I was watching a Jimmy Dore video, and he was like, how many of them were not already in office? And then the answer was, like, oh my God, besides Dirk's girlfriend and Presley, everybody else was already there to begin with. And I hate that O'Rourke, turned down, another term in the House to launch that Senate bid, because now we're stuck with whoever the Democrat was that replaced him, who I hope is in the same, tradition, but I doubt it. Society's gotten a lot more cynical and skeptical, which is why we don't trust strangers. Back in the day, I'm sure you could leave your kid with a stranger for a few minutes. You even start on the, I don't remember, I don't answer the door to random people. Well, maybe you can phone bank or call people. Uh, Winning can't relate. Yeah, it feels like all we do is support candidates that don't make it through, but we're aware of the reasons for that. Like a lot of people, I remember seeing 2 years ago say, "Oh, you couldn't get Sanders to win because people didn't like him, not because mainstream media didn't cover him that much or the primary was rigged," which they're actually. I was going to make an edited video where I talked about how they're going to rig it against them a second time, but we'll discuss that next week or the week after that. I'm still trying to do that screenshot video, so all these projects are piling up. Let me see. Gotta start somewhere. Great to see the small victories. Yeah, but what is disturbing to me is that, so like for example, I don't like my congressperson. I think they're an awful individual. Um, I'm I'm disgusted with them. Also, Dirk, I'm gonna explain why that was, why that happened for him, because actually there's a little mechanics into it. But going back to what I was talking about, in my district, if you wanted to unseat the person who's in Congress right now, you would need about 150,000 votes. And if you remember with Dirk's girlfriend, Ocasio Cortez, she got what, 13,000, 14,000, about maybe 3,000 more than Crowley. But the bottom line is that whereas she was able to win by getting a couple of thousands, you need that times 10. to pull off a California seat in the House. And I think now you can see where it becomes all the more complicated. Let's see. I've can prove to be way too tedious. Imagine you're going to grease some palms to get ahead. Yeah, just going door to door. Hello, you want to hear what I'm saying? No. They close the door on you. Hello, do you hear what I'm saying? No. They close the door on you. But that also translates into when do you start campaigning? Because if you remember the Senate elections that we had over here with the TYT backed candidate of Hartson, she got into the race in November, so about 7 months before the primary was over, and I thought that was stupid. I openly said, why would why would they wait to have the person get in a couple of months before the thing is over, while they have to both fundraise, build name recognition, and they're doing this all without the assistance of being talked about by the same media that most people will watch. It does suck, Dirk. I agree, but I'm assuming you're referring to the thing of what I just said about how many votes you need to get a House seat over here, as opposed to in New York or in some other smaller state. All right, yeah, but I was also, was it you who said the thing about it? Oh, yeah. Well, Bernie isn't the only one. The other one is Angus King. But with Sanders, the way it worked was that he first ran for the Senate and lost pretty handedly, and then became mayor of Burlington. Then, after becoming more popular from that, was elected to the House, stayed there for about 16 years until the Vermont junior senator Jim Jeffords stepped down, and then he ran the Democratic primary, beat both of or rather beat the candidates that were in that race, then switched to being an independent after beating the Democrat in that race, so that the Democrat would be prohibited from running against him. So it was just going to be him and the Republican versus each other. That made me think, why did it take him so long to do that? But that's how it started, or rather, that's when how he was able to get in the Senate, build up name recognition from smaller offices over a number of years, then run in the Democratic primary, beat that candidate, then change your affiliation. He could have, if theoretically, if we lived in a world where the DNC didn't rig their primary and he had won, he theoretically could have done the exact same thing after being elected, to the presidency if that happened. Um, Run as a Democrat, then after you get in office, change your affiliation independent. That's the only way for a great candidate to not stay to a rigged party. Yeah. Well, that's what is so frustrating about what's going on with him now, where it seems like you can't get these people without there being some kind of snag. Like, I really liked O'Rourke and Gillum during the primary, and then when they get to general, they start doing this centrist thing to try appealing to voters that already are not going to vote for them. And that's one of the biggest issues I've had with Democrats. They do this thing where they think I can get the far gones, the people who've already declared in their heads, I don't want you. It's like, let's pretend I ran for the House in 5 years. I'm barely meeting the eligibility requirement. You would have people automatically dismiss me as being inexperienced, not knowing what I'm doing, having no ability to empathize with the things that are needed to be done to get into actively legislating. This would all come off the floodgate without me even saying a word to them or meeting them or justifying why I'm doing this. And the stupid person would say, "Oh man, I've got to go up to them and say, I have all these years of experience being a commentator, and I know the policies." And blah, blah, blah. But the person who is, actually wants to appeal to their base and will just accept the idea that there are going to be people who will not vote for you under any circumstances, will remain firm in what they believe and just talk about the issues. So let me read what Envoy said. You can't even bring up the topic of voting because people have been shaded by all the lies from the government. Dirk says Gillum needed to stay to the progressive base. Yeah, and then he made the mistake of thinking, oh man, if I just act like a centrist, I'll be able to get people to switch over and not vote for DeSantis. That's which is my own nickname for the other candidate. Uh, I just love how I'm the only one who says that to everybody. That was my own little nickname for him. And I still watch that debate between him and Gillum and just think to myself, that man who denies climate change and basically campaigns as I am Trump Jr. without actually having the same name was able to get 4 million people to vote for him. To where that race is even if Gillum does win, it will be just barely be a victory. And that's sad. That doesn't say anything bad about him. It says something bad about the people over there. Oh my God. Is a recount even going to make a change? Um, I don't know. And it's frustrating because the only one of those elections that there's enough reason to believe if there was more action taken to get a different result is the Georgia one because Brian Kemp, as the Secretary of State, ran into a conflict of interest with the votes, or rather with suppression that he was charged with. So maybe. Let's see what's written here. Oh, and then the other frustrating part of that Texas race was with O'Rourke not being able to go back to his House seat. I was first upset with that, and then I found out that he had pledged to serve a number of years in the House, and I think to serve 2 terms as senator if elected to both of those. And it went into another issue I have, which is this idea that we have these candidates that want to run on this term limit crap, which I think is a stupid idea. And I've said it before. If a population of people says I want this person for 30 or 40 years, let them do it. Term limits, in fact, were only invented for the presidency because the Republicans got sick of getting smacked up by FDR over and over. Um, and so now we've seen people try to incorporate that on a smaller level where they go and complain, oh, this senator's been around for 5 terms, or this congressman's been around for 10 terms, and oh my God, we need new blood. Like, well, then let the new people run. There's no rule prohibiting them from challenging that person. So I think it's a dumb idea that unfortunately a lot of smart people have signed on to. I was going to do a stream about how uh, the Senate could be flipped, and I was going to bring up this the Democrat that ran against Angus King and the goofy Republican in Maine. But I had a person who had actually said, go look at this clip, and I watched the debate between the three of them. And one of the questions that was asked was, "Do you believe in term limits?" And then the Democrat in this race, who is progressive, he was endorsed by the Democratic Socialist or whatever, and he had said that he did, and that he would only serve so many years. And I thought to myself, this is why we can't ever make any progress with getting a progressive Congress, because we get the people in there who say, I'm fine with, staying in here for 10 years, but once 2 or 3 more get in here, I'm out. I'm going to go run for something else. I'm going to retire. So it seems like it's just this thing where it's like we take two steps forward and then 1 step back. Like it doesn't, you know, you get my point. Gerrymandering is the worst, and with challenging is a long-term candidate is almost impossible if big money is in politics on the state level. Um, yeah, and that's kind of the point of what I'm trying to say here, that you have a lot of people who I don't believe are evil. Like they're not actively trying to discriminate against anyone, but they run with the help of these corporations because in their heads they think that's the only way they can win. And I think at the state level, it's certainly possible if you have enough people paying attention, do it without involving any of these corporations. Happened to Envoy. Maybe he took a page out of your playbook, Dirk, and got himself a congressman elect girlfriend too. It's all part of the playbook. What else? There was some other part of this that I thought was fascinating, mildly, that is, where you have people who, like within the Senate alone, how many are bought out. You know, I've always had a hard time answering that because, like, I could just easily say, oh, you know, Bernie and Warren aren't, and then we would go, okay, that's it. But I've heard that there are 4 members of the Senate that don't take money from corporations. I just don't know who the other 2 are. Heck, it might even not be those 2. It might be a thing. Just like I really like Ron Wyden from Oregon. Um, and I don't know if he's a corporate Democrat because he, first of all, was brave. He was the first senator to endorse gay marriage all the way back in the '90s when the Democrats were doing a little neoliberal, uh, pro conservative position nonsense. Um, so I don't know if who all they are, but there are people who I don't think are in that same bubble. Like Jeff Merkley, he was the only senator to endorse Bernie during the campaign. That's what makes it tricky. Politicians taking money from corporations. Yeah, and then how many people that don't seem to get it? Um, just like I toy with this idea of this potential run because I'm trying to convey to you that I can already see how it would play out, which is when you get people who actually are engaged with the process, a lot of them want to argue against the idea that the person they've been hearing is doing such a great job in the House or the Senate hasn't done anything. Where it almost becomes this exclusive club where, how dare you say we can have better or get someone that's nicer. I mean, we talk about the Ocasio-Cortez thing being impressive, but, and this is not, me downing her at all. Crowley didn't campaign, and yet he was still able to get thousands of votes. So you gotta understand that when you go into these races and you have a lack of funds, no advertisements, it just all pops down on you. And I don't want to go and say all the Justice Democrats are idiots because they didn't win because I understand the circumstances relating to it, but it's feeding into a narrative that the only way you can pull any of this stuff off is just um, being bought. Let's see. People don't care to know, but that's even scary. People will vote blindly. They don't know any policy, but they will vote. I've been in positions where I was clueless, so I didn't vote. I'd rather that. If you don't participate in the evil, then no one will be able to know. Or rather, you won't be accountable for what is done by that person. But yeah, this progressive Congress thing that people have talked about, I don't see it happening. And that's kind of the scariest part about being in the camp for Sanders, if you want to call it that, where in the likelihood of him getting elected, which let's say that the rig primary thing doesn't happen, they actually change their rules. He's going to get stuck with a Congress filled of people that are serving against the interest of what he wants to do. Like, oh, let's try to get Medicare for all. Then you're going to have all these pharmaceutical company backing senators say, screw that, government takeover of healthcare. Ugh. So he can't even try or do anything before getting shot down. And then, 10 years later, after he's out of office, well, Sanders didn't really do anything. It couldn't. It's gonna be the same obstruction except financially motivated. The Obama McConnell stuff. Obama McConnell. The stuff with McConnell and the Republicans obstructing him was based around the idea of, hey, if we make this person not be able to do anything, regardless of if we would do it ourselves or not, there's a higher chance that people will see him as a failure. He looked at what happened with Bush's 2004 reelection bid, where he was able to get people to in Congress, Democrats, to collaborate with him on No Child Left Behind, actual quote unquote accomplishments or things that he was able to do, and that helped him win. So he said, okay, well, they made the mistake of assisting their enemy or the opposing party's president. So let's do the complete antithesis of that. And you can see in the years that have followed since Obama's been out of office, and we've already been over my not being a fan of his, but you can see that it was the same. It was based around just wanting to mess with the person that was already in there, because you don't see McConnell now trying to condemn the 7 wars that we're still in, that we were in during that time, that he was, actively criticizing him over. So it's just hypocrisy. And, people like that are able to stay in office because they have dollars and they have name recognition. But yeah, to go back to what I was saying, it's more like a progressive handful obstruction should be combated by direct ballot initiatives. Yeah, we have a couple of people in there that are decent, and waves and waves of congressmen that don't do anything. Like one day I was looking at Alabama's congressional uh, delegation. So you have 2 Democrats, 1 senator, 1 congresswoman, and then the Republicans. It's like I think it's 8 members of the House. But I looked at them and I said to myself, out of this whole group of people, can any of them name anything they've done for their constituents? Any policy that they've actually initiated? Like I went through their pages and I said, okay, well this one is anti-science. This one is, whining about abortion rights. But if any of them actually sat back and crafted some legislation that, did something for the people of their state. And I couldn't find, like, out of the Democrats and Republicans, I couldn't find anything. The only one that I kind of gave a pass to was Richard Shelby, who I will always have a slight amount of respect for because he was the only Republican to vote against the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which, repealed Glass-Steagall under Clinton. It's the only vote he ever cast that was that was redeeming of him. So let me see. Oh, it should be combated. Okay, I read that. Oh, it just disappeared again. Some strange stuff. Um, here we go with the issue with the streams again, where it's me trying to come up with stuff off the cuff, and you get the little dead air time, which is what made it less interesting to do it, or rather, why I stopped doing them as often. Um, and it sucks because I do enjoy being able to have a policy-based discussion where people just kind of throw ideas off of each other, and no one really is trying to say anything dumb or, being combative. And that's not, most people don't seem to have that. Now you go on Twitter and you find people arguing back and forth in these messages. I've even participated in some of those, and I just said screw it. Gone in the wind. No, but if I ever did run for office, I would announce 2 years before the election, knock on doors, because in my mind, whether I won or not, I always like the idea of saying, I attempted. If they were too dumb to realize it, it's not, really up to me to determine it. So, like, for example, if I said, man, all these people have this horrible representative, let me offer myself as the alternative. And I go and I knock on every single door in that district, hand out material such as and whatnot. And the people still don't vote for me. I don't feel bad. Maybe even, let me do it right now. Imagine I had like a little podium and I was like standing up and there was a camera that's like 20 yards away so you see my whole body. That's how you make the announcement. No, but I do think that whenever you do an early announcement, look at what happened with Delaney. He announced that he was running for president, 7 months into Trump being in office, and he's still polling at less than 1%. And no one's gonna vote for him because nobody knows who he is. He's nothing. That's gonna be his legacy, that he was the person who announced out of the Democrats the earliest presidential campaign. But that campaign's been going on for over a year now, and no one knows who he is. And he still doesn't even have anything on the main contenders who, at this point, have not announced. He was the first to lose. No, he hasn't lost Dirk, but he's not going to win because he's not. No one knows nothing about him. Just another run-of-the-mill Democrat. Uh, what's going on? Been a while. Say hello to him. I don't know if I'm supposed to call you Dream Villain or Doctor 3 AM or I don't know. You'll have to clarify for me. Imagine if I just put the stream in a hostage situation where like this stream does not go forward until you clarify your name. Where is Envoy? I hope nothing happened to him. Where'd he go? He must be at one of his congressional parties. So, Yemen crisis won't be fixed. Yeah, there's too few people in Congress that give a hoot. Which, by the way, what I thought was really interesting was the idea of, so like for example, let's say we can't knock out any of these politicians that are actively making the U.S. horrible or are, you know, letting that happen. What if someone or a group of people waged a month, 2 month, 3 month campaign where every year for a couple of weeks they go out to that person's state, if they're a senator, or that person's district, and they meet with loads and loads of individuals and hand them out pictures and information. So, like the context and then the photo of the Yemen conflict. So, like, imagine if I went to Kentucky and I said, hey, you like Mitch McConnell, right? He's up for re-election in 2 years. Well, he voted to table a resolution that would end the U.S.'s involvement in the Yemen genocide. And here's a bunch of photos of, what they're doing to those kids over there. Your senator voted for that. And I don't, I have no problem with Republicans, but I have a problem with, innocent babies being bombed to death. And I think you should see this. I think that that would be very effective in just showing people, what their representatives are allowed to do and not get talked about in the news at all. Phones low might be causing errors from my end. I don't see any errors, so that must be off. Information's everywhere, yet nobody wants to use the internet that way. Oh yeah, that's why I've had to introduce it to people personally. Um, and I do think if you're running against an incumbent, one of the best things to do is go around with material relating to what they've done and show people, hey, look, this is what they did, this is what they support, this is what they're in favor of, and see whether or not they like it. I guarantee you that if those 4 million people that Cruz likes that Cruz got to vote for him against O'Rourke were shown that stuff, you would either get a small fraction that, their stomach is turned, but you would get an even larger fraction that would say, yeah, we don't like this. You're our senator. We're going to support you, but we're not going to support this particular policy. And that's what kills me about these people who live in the red states and over here, for example, where it's traditionally Democrats that run the place, unless there's some really strong Republican, which doesn't seem to come around unless their last name is Schwarzenegger. Um, they don't do anything to show people, you know, what all is going on. And so eventually we're going to keep getting individuals who are ignorant that vote for these people. It's very infuriating, Dirk. I've thought about actually doing what I just told you, but I don't have the materials and the resources to just print out all these copies of this stuff and give it to all these people. I'm one person. Just like with the military budget, I was going around and showing that to people on Twitter, but you see how it's been months since I started doing that because one individual constantly talking about something, even if it's to loads and loads of different people, can't make something go viral by themselves. So it's just a pattern of, me making attempts to, I think, change the way things are going. Um, I actually had a person who, I think it was maybe a week or two ago, commented and said, "Oh, I hope that you actually run instead of just talking about it." Even though all of the political commentators like TYT or the ones on Fox or the ones on CNN literally have careers off of just talking about it. But I guess I can't get away with that. I don't have the same luxury. That's very fitting. How fair is that? Um, but if it did happen, I wouldn't. I think I just outlined what the strategy would be, which is if you're running against someone that's already been in office, talk about the very terrible parts of their record, um, and just ask the people if they support that. And that's something I'd be willing to do even if it weren't about necessarily getting this person out of office. It's more dedicated toward the idea of actually causing change. So like for example, if I went to Texas right now and I went and just started showing people all this stuff about Yemen and, oh, your two senators support this, this wouldn't be about preparing for O'Rourke's rematch campaign against Cruz in 6 years. It would be about stopping these people from living under representatives that don't represent them. Yeah, it's a change that is needed, but with a team where you need multiple people who are upset about particular policies saying, this is dumb, let's go over here and change it. It's exactly what it is. Unfortunately, we don't have what seems to be a large number of people who are pissed in that manner, going and saying, why is this happening? Why is this authorized? Who lets this go on? Why are they doing this? Like that deep thought is not running through the minds of a lot of voters. They just, hear about Trump every day. They might see their representative one time a year. Person comes up every 2 to 6 years. They vote for him for another term, and then things stay the same. Yet no one questions it. There's no attention to detail. Um, I don't have one. Not really. Oh, I don't blame you. I'm very cynical about it. First of all, it's a horrible website to have a conversation with someone on, because of the character limit, and then you have all these people who try to have conversations with you on there. It almost feels like a text debate where you must respond to this person, but in so many characters. I think that's dumb. I've seen people write 7 or 8 messages back to one person. Like, man, what's the point of that? They're not even gonna read those. No, somewhere like here where you can, say something for however long you want, pretty much, or Even Facebook, pretty much, just any of these other websites that don't have a character limit are lending themselves toward being somewhere I'd rather be on. And I've generally become disenfranchised with texting things to people in large numbers. That's why I don't leave many comments on videos anymore, unless they're my own, of course, because people like to start arguments and just that's my headache. So I do want to do the edited video about how they're going to rig the primary again. I want to used to give me all the time. Oh yeah, and they even expanded and it still sucks. Um, it's like Obamacare. It's like, oh man, before we had that, we didn't have anything. It's like, yeah, we have that now, and we still don't have what we need. And all the people who are saying the other one won't work are acting like, I want to just. I almost made a stream, and it was just gonna be called "It's a Big Scam," where I just talk about all the ways people are being ripped off by the politicians. Like, they tell you that we can't have single payer health care, and the only reason they say that is because the pharmaceutical companies pay them to act stupid, and they know that if they're not in control of how much the medicine costs, that's going to be bad for their business, and they shove the money into the pockets of Democrats and Republicans to keep them hush hush. And if you do have an extended comment written down on social media, it will just scroll past for it, like for it not being bite-sized news. Yeah, it's like why even try? Why even put effort into it? At least if you win a House seat, you can get a, a hell of a salary, and that's a lot easier to do in some places than others. Um, we have House seats in a couple of states that are you need as many votes as it would take to be governor, which is insane to me, but it's reality. I think that it's that way in Vermont, where they only have one seat that Bernie was on year after year, and then was taken over by this other guy whose name I'm forgetting. And I do feel bad. It's the only representative they have, and I can't remember his name. Oh well, it'll come to me after the fact, as things often tend to do. No, but I do like the strategy that was laid out, where you announce years in advance, and then you talk to all the people. You discuss your positions. You have some paraphernalia or a booklet or whatever, pamphlet, and then you let what happens happens. I don't even like debates that much because it's you and another person on a, again, limited amount of time responding to what the other person is saying, and you have to rely on, moments that are cool or decent or stick out to people. Um, and they don't lend themselves toward getting into the policy specifics. Like if I went on a debate stage and I said Obamacare is a half measure that's better than nothing, which is what we had before, but that doesn't excuse it being what it is. People go, "What do you mean? How is it a half measure? What did you want him to do?" And then I'd have to explain how in 2 years he could have passed single payer but chose not to, and how for 6 years he had to defend something that Republicans were dumb for being against to begin with because it was their idea from the Heritage Foundation, 10 years prior. There's all this stuff you'd have to just start dissecting, and you either have to speak really, really fast or just come up with some abridged version on the spot. So that's the other bad part about these debates. It does become objective during bring people that want to start grandstanding in front of a crowd. Yeah, um, just like the sanctuary city thing. I remember, I've criticized the U.S.'s immigration policy, but there was one thing that Mike Huckabee said last year, which was the Democrats were dumb. We didn't say they were dumb, but he said it was dumb of them to openly state their opposition, because if they were smart, they would say they were gonna comply and then not do it. And that's when I realized all of these Democrats whining about what Trump is doing with the family separation, which again I don't agree with. They're just doing it to grandstand to get Latino voters and other people who are of you know more recent immigrant origin to come over and support them. They don't care about them, you know. And it's just sad that if I say Democrats don't care about immigrants during a debate, they would say, "What do you mean? They're fighting against ICE," which has been around for years. Only in the last two have they started caring about it. It's been around. Think about this. It's been around for a decade and a half, and only in the last 2 years of its existence are they upset and complaining and getting angry. And I'm supposed to take them seriously as the people that are upset with you know this policy. So that's another way they trick you with the grandstanding. Um, but let's wrap this up because I'm gonna try to do some other stuff tonight. So all in all, the best way I think people can win elections is if they get into the race early. They try to immerse themselves with people of a similar cause during the primary, and then at that point they show them what their beliefs are. But they go into this with some set of preparation. Like, you don't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to run for senator. No, you think about it a couple of years before you get the funds to have material for your campaign. You tell people that you consider to be personal to you, that you're thinking of running, all this stuff. And I certainly would announce it on here if I did, because I'd want to see if the two of you would donate, which I don't think would happen either way. I think it would be amusing if, like, it's just be sure to say you will lower everyone's taxes. I would say I would increase the taxes of corporations, which is what I would do. But they act like it's bad to say I want increased taxes. But then when you explain, no, I want it on this group, these rich people, these people who get away with having loads of money by sticking it in an offshore bank account, while those of us at the bottom go further down. They don't want to hear that. It's not the buzzword. So that's what I'm saying. Those are the policy specifics that don't get discussed and talked about. That have been allowed to kind of be free reign for people. And it's something that if you had a media that was fair and that interviewed a lot of those progressives in length in the same way that they would for, let's say, you know, one of the corporate Democrats that's already in Congress, or Trump or Republican, whatever, you could get people on board with those ideas, but they're not given that time. They ready and create, and you have already yeah. Before you even entered the race, we already increased it by. That's correct. I'm gonna have to co-sign with that idea, Dirk. But um, it's always not a good world we live in when it comes to info. Oh yes, just like you look up any of the most viewed videos relating to on YouTube to Trump or Obama or whoever, and I guarantee you none of them are policy specific. It's, oh, look at this one video of Trump calling this reporter an idiot. Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything that actually matters? Like, they're whining about him not wanting to go to this World War One commemoration ceremony tomorrow because it's raining. So what? This is that stuff they use to try to trick people into not talking about substantive issues. Um, so it sucks. And I think that the only time we're ever going to get a change is if someone, and again a group of people, makes it their systematic effort to pick a location, pick a state, pick a district, and just tell loads and loads of people you are being conned. And that's what I would do if I were running for anything. So I'm gonna get off. If if I feel like doing a stream about the flipping of the Senate, I'll do that tomorrow, or the day after that, or the day after that, during this week. But you know, just some ideas I've had about how to win these elections that the Justice Democrats keep losing primarily due to factors outside of their control, but that a lot of people still don't get. You have people who will say we need term limits, and then they won't sign on to getting an amendment to the Constitution to where we can revoke Citizens United. Just that's how not practical and fully invested in this issue that they are. They don't know about the specifics of these topics. So it's sad, but thank you for watching, all three of you, and uh, we'll do some tomorrow.